Good evening. This is Maestro Cortello with the Dawn of War 2 Retribution Elite Modcast. Today we have a 2v2 on Jungle Cliff Mines. Is that what it's called? I think so. And our first player today is Commissar Sebastian Yarrick, playing as the Commissar Lord. Slightly tanky melee hero. He starts out with a free energy shield. Not a very good one, but it's still free. He gets it at the start when everybody else has to pay for their energy shields. And he can also buff his own troops by shooting them in the head, making them fight harder. His teammate is DJ Raffa, playing as the Ravener Alpha. This is a tunneling Tyrannid hero. Starts out fighting melee and ranged. You get your choice in weapon upgrades, whether you want to emphasize melee or ranged. And he also makes those tunnels, which are very, very good for army mobility. Right now he's just standing around capturing and starting to shoot now. Their opponents, we've got SuperHooper, playing as the Chaos Lord. The Chaos Lord is a tanky melee hero, pretty dominant in the life of Dawn of War 2. Walks around in Terminator armor. He cannot be suppressed or knocked down, however he can still be killed, as we can see. And he starts out with a combi bolter as well as a power or demon sword. He can get a few better weapon upgrades later on. His teammate is Adila, playing as the Orc Kommando Nob. The Kommando Nob is a sneaky orc by orc standards. Starts out with a very, very powerful twin-link shooter that has 100% accuracy on the move. He can get a variety of different weapons as well. Definitely a broad range of weapons. He can get a rocket launcher, a shotgun, or a knife, as well as a variety of bomb accessories. And right now we also see him upgrading to some of those stick bombs. Alright, so we see Yarrick and Raffa teaming again. Seems like they do that a lot. Probably a pretty solid team. Both very good players. Yarrick not as practiced these days, generally busy with many other things. Raffa, I'm not sure what's going on with him. He's frequently quitting Dawn of War 2 and then starting to play again, but either way, certainly very good players. Adila, very, very good player, and SuperHooper, probably a pretty solid player too. Feel like I haven't seen as much of him in replays, and don't usually see him more in... I feel like I don't really see him as much playing with this crowd, so this is a little bit new, but definitely pretty solid. So we've got a double Sentinel play out of Yarrick. This is a play that can be very, very oppressive early on. It can just have some trouble scaling on a bit into Tier 2, since it gets a lot harder to keep your Sentinel alive. You can, of course, get the missile launcher, and the Sentinel can still do very wonderful things in Tier 2, but the main thing is just that it gets a lot harder to keep your Sentinel alive. SuperHooper with a double Chaos Space Marine build. He's already got Eternal War on both of them, so he's actually got a decent amount of range firepower, relatively speaking, for Chaos. Chaos usually not a race with strong early ranged openings, and usually going for a strong early ranged opening with Chaos is a little bit expensive and kind of leaves you with some gaps, and it makes it hard to also get other units. Generator coming up. So, actually been pretty quiet, although we do have some Tyranids right here coming out of a tunnel, going for a generator bash against Adila's orcs. However, we do have a looter right here suppressing all of these Tyranids. Hormagaunts got suppressed. I was actually very worried for them. I'm surprised we didn't see some of those stick bombs potentially in retreat. Could have done a lot to those Hormagaunts. We also have Sluggas getting out of there with only one model.
Sir, our advantage is slight.
And let's see, we do have Yarrick in a lane against SuperHooper, so we did go for a double Sentinel build against Chaos, and I feel the double Sentinel build is particularly strong against Chaos. Probably better against Chaos than it is against any other race, since Chaos usually doesn't have as strong of a ranged opening. That being said, SuperHooper still went for about as strong of a ranged opening as he could really get out of Chaos. He is getting the Combi Flamer, so he actually really is trying to emphasize ranged. And he does, of course, get some pretty durable range units, since his range units are double Chaos Space Marines. I think he still needs to be a little bit careful, mainly because there's still a lot of chance that SuperHooper is going to bleed from his Chaos Space Marines, while Yarrick will not bleed from his Sentinels. The best I guess he can hope for, SuperHooper that is that he will be able to get his Chaos Space Marines out of there without losing a model, while bleeding the Guardsman models. And he does, of course, also have his Heretic Worship that he can use to rush and pursue Sentinels when they try to get away. And that's definitely a pretty unique advantage that the Chaos Lord has over other Chaos heroes, particularly in the Imperial Guard matchup. Although, usually, there are definitely ways in which I feel the Sorcerer is stronger against Imperial Guard than the Chaos Lord, although that is one particular advantage that the Chaos Lord has over the other Chaos heroes. Alright, Termagant's about to engage some shooter boys. I was actually slightly surprised to see Adila back off, but I think he's mainly backing off because he's being approached by the Warriors. But now that the Warriors have backed off, I think he should approach again because I think he's in a more... I think Adila's in a more advantageous position. I think his ranged units will beat out Raffa's ranged units because he's got the double shooter boys. They're both fully upgraded at this point with big shooters as well as their knobs, so they're definitely going to outshoot Termagants. Even Termagants upgraded with Toxin Sacks, I'm pretty sure they will outshoot because they definitely do more damage. And the Termagants will lose models quite a bit more easily. There we go with some stick bombs in retreat. Still got 3 models, although that could have been an even better... he actually like slightly missed. His timing was not perfect, but he still managed to get 3 models. I actually wonder how devastating that could have been with just slightly better timing. Alright, Chaos Space Marines right here. We actually definitely have... Although... The double Sentinel build will definitely not be as effective against Adila, or at least it wouldn't have been in Tier 1. However, Yarrick is now in Tier 2. He actually went for an extremely light Tier 1. A very, very light Tier 1. One of the lightest I've... like, possible. He actually spent no power whatsoever in Tier 1, which is somewhat bizarre. It's not entirely impossible, and it was... Actually, it wasn't entirely... Especially back in retail. Actually, I could be wrong. I think he did get... I think he did buy Sentinel Stomps. But back in retail... Imperial Guard could actually go for a 0-power Tier 1 by just getting Guardsmen and Sentinels. And sometimes they might actually get 2 Guardsmen, 2 Sentinels. That would be a 0-power Tier 1. And it was about as effective as the Imperial Guard Tier 1 was at that time. Now, of course, Imperial Guard does have a greater variety of choices. Now that they also have Artillery Spotters, which are often a very frequently used unit for Imperial Guard. And this Sentinel Micro is actually quite beautiful. Yarrick might even be attacking ground with those strikes to try to catch those Chaos Space Marines on the move. But right now, those Chaos Space Marines are actually not doing very well at all against the Sentinel. And certainly, the Chaos Space Marines, as they are right now, with no mark, are really not going to be that effective against the Sentinel, especially now that they have their missile launcher. Because the Chaos Space Marines cannot afford to just stand still against the Sentinel, or otherwise they'll just take way too much damage. And right now those Chaos Space Marines are really not going to be doing enough damage to the Sentinel, except for the fact that at least one of them is upgrading to the Mark of Tzeentch. The other one cannot yet afford it. We now have over here a Ravener Alpha that has the Acid Splatter. This actually turns the Ravener Alpha into a melee hero, and this is an ability that people have been saying is a little bit too good. Certainly, I mean, you now have a melee Ravener. He does power melee, and he also has Splash. The Splash is only piercing, so it's not quite as overwhelming as the splash damage from like a Dreadnought or something, but we still have a splash damage hero. Can be very effective against squishy infantry squads. And I mean even against power armor units because it's power melee. I was going to say power armor melee, which wouldn't actually be too stupid, but the Ravener Alpha also has the Regenerate War Gear. This allows him to regenerate health faster, as well as giving him some extra health. This is also something that I've definitely heard people say is a bit too good. And especially, well, Raffa is using it with the Acid Splatter, but I've been told that the Ravener Alpha in heavy cover shooting is too good with Regenerate, just because of how difficult it is to kill him when he can regenerate his health as much as he is, as well as getting that heavy cover bonus. So SuperHooper is still struggling a lot. I mean, the double Chaos Space Marines, even though they're the highest source of damage that SuperHooper is going to get against the Sentinels, they still aren't quite cutting it because there are 2 Sentinels shooting those rockets, and those Chaos Space Marines are going to bleed models if they keep getting hit by those Sentinel missile launchers. So SuperHooper, I actually feel, is struggling a lot, to be honest. This is going to be absolutely terrible. Yeah, I mean, Chaos Space Marines now, and he's attacking ground to try to catch them in retreat. A slight miss, but we're actually seeing a lot of really beautiful and advanced and actually very unique play from Yarrick. I mean, that was a totally called shot. He was totally attacking ground there to try to catch those heretics in retreat. And again, that was just something there where we saw, like with Adila, we saw Adila just having... his timing was just slightly off when he did those stick bombs earlier, and it could have been absolutely devastating if his timing was just slightly better. That was also a situation with Yarrick right there, where with just slightly better timing, that probably would have been a wipe on those grenade launcher heretics. And I just feel we're seeing both players messed up their timings, but I just feel it's so impressive how we're seeing these players going for these rather difficult plays that really have a very huge payoff. Grenade goes in right there from Yarrick, sorry. There we go with a kaboom from the Kommando Nob, but actually doesn't do a whole lot. The positioning on the Kommando Nob when he used that wasn't so great. But this is a war gear. Basically makes the Commando explode, and it's particularly funny when he himself gets knocked back, although the Adila has also upgraded to get the Mega Boom Kit, which increases the damage that the Commando does with explosives, as well as making it so that he does not get knocked back by his own Kaboom ability. Oh no, this is 1 Sentinel down, so rather unfortunate for Yarrick. Unfortunately, he was just kind of caught in bad positioning, slightly slow on his micro, and I think he also may have even path blocked his own Sentinel with his guardsmen. So this double Sentinel play, we've been seeing it do very, very well, but it takes a lot of skill to use, and it's also high risk because of how easily those Sentinels can get killed. And certainly the combination now of the las cannon as well as the Mark of Tzeentch Chaos Space Marines is extremely threatening against the Sentinel. Only 1 shot from the las cannon is needed to snare the Sentinel. And then, I mean, pretty much at that point, the Chaos Space Marines are just going to do their damage, and they do a massive amount of damage to heavy infantry, especially now that they're fully upgraded. And this play, the double Tzeentch Chaos Space Marine play, was something that was very, very common in retail. It's still definitely seen in Elite. Very, very common among low and mid-level players. And it still sometimes makes an appearance by high-level players, but usually only in team games. It's actually pretty rare to see this kind of build in a 1v1 game by high-level players. It certainly has some benefits. Mainly, it's a massive amount of ranged firepower that's good against almost everything. The main issue is just that it leaves you with a slight gap. It doesn't really leave you with a great army composition, and you're not really in a great position to deal with vehicles. That being said, Yarrick hasn't chosen to get any vehicles yet. We'll see what kind of vehicles he chooses to get. I mean, at some point he may want to get one. Certainly a Chimera would actually be pretty, at this point, would be pretty effective against, would have been pretty effective against SuperHooper. I think he would just mainly have to account for the Havoc, which he could definitely use the Commissar Flare to deal with that, or even just infiltrated Stormtroopers. There we go. Oh my god! So already Yarrick got to tier 3. He's been building a very, very lean army. And part of what he did was he didn't even spend that much in tier 2. He got his Sentinel missile launchers, which really aren't that expensive, and then he got his Stormtroopers, which cost a lot of wreck, but he actually did not spend any power whatsoever. So again, he spent very, very little power. He mostly spent requisition in tier 2. So now he's already to tier 3, and he rushed ahead and got the Emperor's Wrath of all things, which is actually going to be extremely devastating. And this is actually going to make a vehicle play, if and when Yarrick chooses to get a vehicle, he will actually be very, very in a very, very good position against SuperHooper, because his answer to the Havocs is the Emperor's Wrath, and that's something that could threaten, that would do a huge amount of damage to the Havocs, definitely force a retreat off early, possibly even threaten to wipe it. So Yarrick, if he gets a vehicle, is going to be in an extremely strong position against SuperHooper. Alright, meanwhile over here, I feel like I haven't been paying as much attention to Adila and Raffa. But Adila, meanwhile, pushing ahead with his double big shooters. He's got the... I did see this before, but he's got the special shooter on his Kommando Nob, which is a pretty nice upgrade. These Tzeentch Chaos Space Marines... Now, part of the problem... Ooh, they do actually take out that Sentinel, which is good for them. I mean, it's generally extremely, extremely hard to keep Sentinels alive against, especially double Tzeentch Chaos Space Marines. It's almost more trouble than it's worth. Even against a single Tzeentch Chaos Space Marine squad, it is very, very difficult to keep a Sentinel alive. So Yarrick now looking a little bit thin, but he's most likely going for a Manticore at this point. Meanwhile, we've got Warriors not doing well. Definitely, they are not really up to the task of going toe-to-toe with upgraded Sluggo Boys in melee. They will absolutely lose that fight. Sluggo Boys doing a huge amount of damage. Warriors really not doing that much damage. Warriors mostly good for the Synapse that they have, so combining that with Hormagaunts or Gene Stealers, and also just for the disruption that they get from disrupting by leaping into combat. Oh no, what is Raffa doing? Dropping his micro, loses 8 Termagant models. 8? Anyway. Oh, and we're going to have Ravner Alpha come right out of that tunnel. Actually manages to get around the Luda firing arc, and yeah, at this point he must know that he is around the Luda firing arc and should be able to just get in, tied up in melee. We see that splash effect right there. It did quite a bit of burst damage as well. Meanwhile, back over here, Yarrick is undoubtedly going for a Baneblade and could already start it, so he's just a little slow on getting it started. And we have these double Stormtroopers, and I think we're seeing a lot of infiltrated play from the Stormtroopers, and I think that's working out pretty well for Yarrick. Now, the Stormtroopers definitely toe-to-toe, just in a direct fight, they definitely lose to the Tzeentch Chaos Space Marines. But Yarrick may be using the elements of surprise, coming out of infiltration, focus firing one Chaos Space Marine squad so that he can quickly bleed models off the Chaos Space Marine squads. So that's just a way that you can kind of use your units in a certain way to gain an advantage where they would otherwise probably lose, because head-to-head, Stormtroopers are going to lose to Tzeentch Chaos Space Marines. They do less damage, they have less health, and they also have infantry armor instead of heavy infantry armor. The Stormtroopers even have a damage penalty against the Chaos Space Marines, so they don't do as much damage. Now, of course, the Stormtroopers, again, they have that infiltration, so they can come out of infiltration, come as a surprise, and focus fire one squad of Tzeentch Chaos Space Marines. They also get actually a damage. They actually get a slight damage resistance coming out of infiltration, because they actually take 20% less damage when firing from infiltration. They also outrange the Chaos Space Marines, so they can shoot from longer range and do damage to the Tzeentch Chaos Space Marines when the Tzeentch Chaos Space Marines are out of range. Now, we've got Nobs from Adila. However, they are being controlled by the Termagants using crippling poison, which is good. So Yarrick, actually rather, Raffa has a lot of ways that he can control the Nobs. However, what the blue team really right now is lacking is they're lacking a significant source of damage against the Nobs. They have a lot of different sources of damage. They can focus fire a lot with the Stormtroopers, the Termagants, but they're lacking something that really does a lot of damage, because all of those units have a penalty against the heavy infantry armor of the Nobs. So they might want to get something that will actually do bonus damage, or at least full damage, like Plasma Guardsmen for Yarrick. Ooh, and this is tough though, with the Baneblade now out on the field. SuperHooper at this point, he has lost his Heretic squad, and I think I caught that on screen actually. But I mean, between the Demolisher Cannon as well as the Emperor's Wrath, Yarrick really has what he needs to disrupt and take out the units that are going to be threatening his Baneblade, or at least the Havoc. Certainly the Havoc, any other setup AV, such as this Beamy Luda, he mainly is going to have to worry about the Nobs at this point. And I think he'll mainly be relying on Raffa's support with the toxin sacks to help him deal with those knobs. So, and I'd say the Commissar is actually compared to other Imperial Guard heroes, or certainly at least compared to the Inquisitor, he doesn't really have much that he can use for control. He doesn't have the Inquisitor's range of stuns, and then I guess compared to the Lord General, he doesn't have things like the move war gear, which he can use to maybe sort of evade the knobs, or just his other array of war gears that he can use as a way of just making his units tougher or healing them. So I feel like Yarrick could suffer a bit against the knobs. We'll see. He is, however, getting a heavy weapon team, so maybe that's his plan. That is, of course, a universal source of control for any Imperial Guard hero, or generally a universal source of control, really, for any race. Basically, just suppression is a source of control. So he might be choosing to keep that as suppression, although now he does have to deal also with a great unclean one from SuperHooper. Demolisher Cannon Shot going in against those Chaos Space Marines, and I mean, we're as very powerful as the Chaos Space Marine play can be. We're also seeing a lot of the shortcomings, and SuperHooper is definitely taking a lot of losses and getting hit by that. Oh my god, and while I'm talking about Chaos Space Marines, I miss a rocks, wiping much of Raffa's army, lost warriors, lost termagants, nearly lost hormagaunts. Alright, Havoc's still set up here in the middle to intercept anything. We actually have double heavy weapon teams, and he's actually getting double las cannon, so he's not controlling the knobs at all, and he might not be worrying about that, since, I mean, he's not going to be in a lane. He's not in a lane against Adila. Now, the double las cannons, that's actually really going to threaten the Great Unclean One, since we've got double the snare effect. The snare effects will stack, as well as doing a lot of damage. There we saw an explosive shell from the Kommando Nob, and now we see that was the None Shall Fall ability coming from the Fist of Brachus. That's the Tier 3 Power Fist from the Commissar Lord. Also gives that None Shall Fall ability, effectively making all your units, or all your squads, rather, invulnerable. Their models cannot be killed, however, they will still take health damage. So you need to be very, very careful about not being in a position where your Commissar has to retreat or he dies, and then your squads are exposed. So it's definitely an ability that carries some inherent risk, although it can also be very, very powerful. We have a grenade throw, unfortunately a swing and a miss with 2 grenades, very hard grenade throws. I feel like that's actually, something you wouldn't very commonly see from better players. But he still went for it anyway, and it can certainly still work. And I guess part of what that also means, ooh, we have now Guardsman dying for Yarrick, and he loses that Guardsman squad. So he loses his only repair support for the Baneblade as of this moment. But this Great Unclean One certainly now in a bit of trouble, taking a las cannon shot, but the heavy weapon team las cannon is now out of range, so the Great Unclean One will not be snared too much longer and can get out of there. Baneblade certainly was still pouring in a lot of damage, and we have some late Spore Mines. I think they were probably a call-in on probably the Havoc, and that would actually be a good team play to use those Spore Mines to force off a Havoc that's potentially threatening your teammate's Baneblade. But Yarrick at this point, he's going to need a new Guardsman squad, or he's going to need a repair bunker to make sure that he can repair this Baneblade. Certainly a repair bunker would actually be pretty powerful. Might still want a Guardsman squad, or he might be saving up for Castricans. Needs to be careful right here. However, we're going to have is that the Emperor's Wrath, or yeah, the Emperor's Wrath, doing some damage. Not as effective against him in retreat, but it forces that retreat, because otherwise the effect is absolutely devastating when it hits those units when they're not retreating. I don't know. I know the Manticore can wipe a Havoc from full health. I don't know if the Emperor's Wrath can, but the Emperor's Wrath is certainly about as powerful, and it can certainly, at the very least, get the squad close to death. But a Manticore can wipe a Havoc from full health. Oh no! We're going to have this Ludo squad maybe go down, taking a lot of hits from these Stormtroopers. We have a rocket. Oh my god, wow! I can't believe that. Oh my god! That was absolutely unbelievable. I really did not, I mean, I know what that ability is. I really did not think that ability was going to be as good as it was. That was the rocket launcher ability, using the right and me crosshairs to basically do a targeted rocket against the stormtroopers, and since they were clumped up, they both got hit, and they were both at about half health, so they both got wiped. I did not realize that. I mean, I knew that ability works. I guess the thing is, frequently you see that ability more frequently used against vehicles than against infantry. And I certainly know that it damages infantry, but I didn't think it was strong enough to do as well as it did. So there went both of Yarrick's stormtrooper squads, which is pretty sad. We have the Great Unclean One in a absolutely terrible position. Fortunately, we do have a stun bomb going off on one of the heavy weapon teams that is going to help him out a bit. Unfortunately, I think with the Great Unclean One having as much health as he does, he is going to get out of there, and I think they also lost sight on the Great Unclean One. But I saw the heavy weapon team, one was getting damaged a lot, the other one got hit by a stun bomb. But I mean, that Great Unclean One was getting hit by two heavy weapon teams as well as the Baneblades. Can definitely take a lot of damage. Fortunately for SuperHooper, the Great Unclean One does have a lot of health. He was also using Worship support so that he was restoring the health of the Great Unclean One while it was being damaged. Certainly not enough if it remained under fire, but still to keep it alive, and it was also giving some speed worship, and we might see the end of this Havoc right here. Double cap for the red team, now at 151 VPs with a double cap, and actually going to threaten a triple cap, or at the very least right now it's just a 2 to nothing. And we have Yarrick, or Raffa now, with the Carnifex train. He's got double Carnifexes, one vanilla, still no upgrade, and another with a Barb Strangler. And we see Yarrick has plenty of resources to get an upgrade, but I mean, I have a feeling that he's actually just trying to get another Carnifex. Chaos Space Marines way overextended. Oh, I mean, look at that. 2 models down, one of them the Aspiring Champion. The Chaos Space Marines, a lot of Chaos Space Marine models have died in this game. And pretty expensive to reinforce those models. Not as much as tax, but still expensive. Actually, it is kind of nice that Chaos Space Marine models are cheaper to reinforce than TAC models, despite not really being that much more squishy. They only have slightly less health, and they actually kind of outperform TACs as the game goes on, aside from the fact that TACs have a bit more versatility with being able to function as anti-vehicle with a missile launcher. Chaos Lord right here. We've definitely seen a lot of Armor of the Inferno. He's got that Combi Flamer. I actually don't think we probably won't see any other upgrades from the Chaos Lord. We now have Kashkans out on the field. There is an Emperor's Wrath, and doing a lot of damage, but again, still just scaring off that Havoc. Now this is extremely dangerous. We have this one Havoc out here, still with only one model. This is something that if we have an Emperor's Wrath or a Demolisher Cannon Shot, this Havoc squad will probably get wiped. So I don't think it's wise for him to keep this Havoc out on the field with only one model, given what he may have to deal with. Because he might... We've been seeing the Havocs getting saved by retreating, but I don't know if retreating could save this Havoc with only one model and about 100 health. So we'll probably see a Demolisher Cannon Shot right here. That might be the end of this Havoc. Actually, a very, very close call. Only 6 health. So a very close call, but I think we had nearly had Heretics wiped. Heretics only at, I think, 3 models. And I don't know why this Predator is moving forward. It's... Unfortunately, the Predator, even with the las cannon, is going to lose to a Baneblade. I mean, it's certainly one of the most powerful sources of damage you can get against a Baneblade, but it's still going to lose directly to the Baneblade quite resoundingly. There we go with the Kommando Nob. Using the Kaboom again, actually did a lot of damage to the Termagant Brood that time. Well, a lot of damage, but didn't kill as many models. But it's actually... Wow, it's actually a double cap for the red team, and they're actually struggling to get the cap. So I think the red team are going to take this. It's certainly getting very, very close. I don't think they need to get something on the point like immediately. And they pretty much need to get these Hormagaunts on the point now. They actually need to stop chasing. Oh no, that's going to be it. I think only a single cap for Yarrick. And I don't think they have enough time to get these Castricans on the point, so I think that's going to be it in favor of SuperHooper and Adila. that is it. Pretty good game. Hope you enjoyed the cast. Have a good night.